What's up guys, it's me Deshaun. Today we'll be finding out how far Rimuru can go fighting the Shonen Jump Gauntlet. And in this gauntlet we have Naruto, Ichigo, Luffy, and last but not least, Goku. Now you might disagree the way I have this ordered, but just because I have these characters ordered in this specific way, that doesn't mean these other characters couldn't potentially beat each other if they were to fight. Like, who knows, maybe Naruto could beat Luffy or Ichigo, or Luffy could beat Ichigo or Luffy. It goes back and forth, so don't get salty over my placement, because, you know, it doesn't really mean anything. We're just using it as a good gauge in starting position, etc. So Naruto, most people familiar with Naruto, and he was step 1 on the list. He's got an understanding of all natures of chakra, practically has an unlimited supply of chakra at his disposal that he can use, so like this dude can basically spam jutsus, no problem. Got some of the best hand-to-hand combat skills, like, period. His taijutsu is disgusting. On top of this, Naruto has truth-seeking orbs which can negate regeneration and also turn into any shape and size that he wants them to be. They can instantly turn anything they touch into dust, so he's got a bunch of death objects at his disposal, like one-shot orbs. Kind of broken when you look at it like that, but that's essentially what they are if he were to use them that way. Basically, unlimited resourcefulness with a one-shot-esque weapon. Now you might say he doesn't have this as adult Naruto, but I don't really care. We're going to deck him out with everything because I want these characters to be at their strongest, even a little bit hypothetical because it's a tool he used in the past. Why should he not be able to use it in a fight? So I just briefly covered the offensive maneuvers of the truth-seeking orbs, but there's also defensive capabilities with them. It can nullify any chakra, jutsu, whatever. And if we're gonna, I guess you could say universally scale that, or what do they say? I don't know. I don't know the power scaling term, and I don't really care that much, but yeah, he could basically nullify almost, well, if not most attacks with these truth-seeking orbs if he wishes to do so. At least to me, when it comes to the big three, I think the thing that stands out the most with Naruto is his versatility and all the different tools that he has at his disposal. Luffy and Ichigo don't really match when it comes to utility belt. This dude's got one-shot orbs. Luffy and Ichigo don't necessarily have anything like that. This dude can use all of the elements, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Naruto's pretty broken with that just by itself. And then you do add his skills on top of that. Ninja tools, potential summons that he could bring in a fight if he ever needed backup. He's also got Biju bombs that can literally destroy mountains, like, very casually. And, let's not forget that, so here's the way I like to look at it, but a lot of people don't necessarily look at it this way. So Goku's got a shit ton of ki. Now, if he kept charging his Kamehameha, and then on top of this, he can make clones of himself. But there's a common misconception that Naruto can make a clone that is basically on the same standing as him. But no, the more clones he creates, the less chakra the individual clone has. That's why usually you'll see somebody give a clone a simple punch and they disappear. But that does not take away from the usefulness of these clones, because they're still resourceful at the end of the day, whether or not it's tricking your opponent or somewhat overwhelming them with numbers to a degree. We've seen this in the Pain fight, where the clones took the form of rocks, got a surprise attack on Pain while he was weakened, and yeah, they defeated him. Not only this, but Naruto's punches can be so strong, he can damage you with the air force behind the attack. And with the Rasengan, he can do cellular damage, damaging you on a cellular level. And on top of this, he would have his Baryon mode form, which significantly boosts his power speed, his overall strength. And with this, he puts you into a double suicide. Granted, his chakra will drain a significant amount and he'll lose all of his power, but the sheer energy from this form can kill his opponent by draining their lifespan. Now, as far as Naruto is concerned, I feel like this is a good margin. I feel like I've highlighted enough skills and abilities to show how strong he is. Now, when it comes to Rimuru, I'm not going to sit here and go down his laundry list of abilities, but rather I'm going to explain why he would be able to defeat somebody like Naruto. So the question here is, can Rimuru actually defeat Naruto? So the first thing that I want to talk about is Rimuru's ability to harness all of the elements and basically having complete domination of those same elements. So first off, I'd like to say that Rimuru is completely resistant. He nullifies any form of natural elemental attacks, anything along those lines. And not to downplay Naruto, because this is just how it is. For example, typically in isekai, I'd say the most basic ability is that the main character can harness, all the elements. So this is not really like an impressive thing. So his yang and yin release abilities that Naruto would have, they don't really do much in comparison to Rimuru, because Rimuru is more or less a high tier isekai protagonist, and low tier ones have these basic abilities of harnessing every single element. Naruto's yang release abilities don't really do much to a character like Rimuru, because I'd hate to say it, it's basically like low tier isekai powers versus somebody like Rimuru who's on the upper echelon of how strong these isekai characters can actually be. So a lot of Naruto's tools just automatically do not work on someone like Rimuru. And then that's not taking into account that Rimuru, you can't necessarily interact with him because his magicules are so high, he would exist beyond being a physical being. And in order to truly kill him, you'd have to kill his physical form and his spiritual form. And, I'm not going to go into details about the latter half of him being like omnipotent and stuff, because it makes this less fun. But for the most part, I'd like to bring up a topic a lot of people seem to overlook in Naruto, and that's the fact that these guys cannot fight ghosts. A lot of people like to take this scene where Naruto's resisting his spirit being ripped out by pain, but if we look at, the spirit transformation technique that Kato Dan uses, Tsunade's lover originally, if you were to use this jutsu, you would become a ghost and no one can attack you. This is also stated in the guidebook. So if you use a jutsu and turn into a ghost, and you're a ghost, nobody can hit you. And Rimuru exists as a spirit and a physical being. So if you were to even destroy his physical form, you wouldn't be able to kill him because Naruto would never be able to interact with him. Maybe you could debate more on that, but it says here in the guidebook that for the most part, they can't really interact with ghosts. And this would be what would make yin release jutsus strong, like the Reaper Death Seal jutsu. Once the Death Reaper shows up, you can't really fight it back because you can't interact with it. And if we look at Tayuya from the Sound 4, when she plays her flute, she summons these ghost-like beings that you cannot interact with. They are yin release. They are not physical. They're spiritual, and spiritual attacks are very kryptonite-esque in the Naruto verse. And that I don't know, a lot of people don't really see that, but there are multiple times where in the show we get examples of spiritual attacks not necessarily working in the Naruto verse. They can't fight it back. And now if we were to even universally scale this and say he can interact with ghosts, Rimuru would unfortunately be up above a higher plane of being a spirit. So even if he were to be able to do that, Rimuru's power, his magicals would be so high, Naruto wouldn't even be able to interact with him. But let's give Naruto the benefit of the doubt and say he can interact with Rimuru regardless. Rimuru has physical attack nullification. He has natural attack nullification. All the elements do not work on him. And if we go band for band with combat ability, Rimuru's combat ability far surpasses Naruto's. If Rimuru wanted to, he could literally just use CL to become an autopilot ultra instinct mode, where this computer brain he basically has can automatically process the combat scenario and logically use any ability or whatever strategy that needs to be done against his opponent and develop perfect countermeasures. Naruto's cellular damage is impressive, but this would not matter because Rimuru, spiritual attacks and physical attacks do not work on him. And even if you were to damage his physical body or his spiritual one, he can regenerate both of them. Not only this, but let's look at the aura battle. So Naruto could damage you with his aura if he's in Baryon mode by killing you, even though it kills himself. If we look at Rimuru in comparison with his Demon Lord Haki, his aura could either just cut you up, tear you to shreds, or just kill you straight up. That's how strong his aura is. At least in my head, I think the best option Naruto would have here would be the truth-seeking orbs. Maybe he could trap Rimuru inside of that and destroy him that way because, you know, these things are like death orbs. You touch it, you get turned to dust, and you die. But unfortunately, the truth-seeking orbs have a counter to them, and that would be nature energy. And not only this, but Rimuru is resistant to all nature-based attacks, like I mentioned before. So it really seems like Naruto has no way of standing a chance against Rimuru. I can't really even think of one. So for now, I can say that Rimuru completes the first stage of this gauntlet. Now the next opponent I decided to use would be the number 2 spot, Ichigo from Bleach. Now unfortunately, when it comes to Ichigo, he does not have that many tools at his disposal. So to really like simplify this, he's basically just a powerhouse with long range capability and short range and incredible swordsmanship. And then he also has abilities from all the different races that he's mixed with, like Quincy powers, and then he's also got his Soul Reaper powers, his Hollow powers, and then his Fullbring powers. Now, there are a lot of different iterations of Ichigo. A lot of them you get to see designed in the Bleach Brave Soul phone game, and you see what it would look like if you leaned more or less on those powers. To make things fair, I say why not? If Ichigo can use he uses Blue Vein in the manga, he can use that. I think he could clearly use a simple Quincy arrow or two, just like how we see in other Bleach media, such as Bleach Brave Soul. I feel like in the Bleach manga, we don't necessarily see him use things such as Quincy arrows, etc. Is because he's never really pushed to a point in which he actually has to rely on them, because for the most part, Ichigo is just significantly stronger than most of his opponents. His simple forms of fighting basically work out for him. And then there's, I guess you could say, debates on whether or not Ichigo has fate manipulation because of, you know, let's say Dangai Ichigo. And there's a lot of symbolism in Bleach, but we're not going to use his fate manipulation or good fortune in this fight, even though low-key I don't feel like it would make a difference against Rimuru. Ichigo doesn't necessarily have a good utility belt outside of just basic laser attacks. You got his Sero, got Quincy arrows, got Blue Vein hardens his body, defensive measures, things of that nature. He can move extremely fast. He's got his Bankai. His Bankai doesn't really do much except for making him faster and boosting, you know, amping up, again, those same powers that he has. But with a minimum amount of these abilities, he really doesn't stand a chance in a battle of versatility against Rimuru, because Rimuru has so many tools. It's absolutely ridiculous. But let's say Ichigo outpowers Rimuru. After all, a simple arm movement from Ichigo, a simple sword swing, not even at his hardest, can blow up mountains. We take into account that Ichigo basically becomes a god. A big aspect that a lot of people do not really bring up with Ichigo versus Aizen, one of the things that makes Aizen such a disgusting threat is because he's at a higher level spirit, right? He's at a god level, and that means no opponent can practically fight him because they wouldn't be able to interact with him. There is a reason why Aizen keeps on yapping about him transcending Soul Reapers and humans, because they cannot interact with him. And if you do not believe me, let's look at this. Having evolved to a plane beyond the Soul Reapers, just as a two-dimensional entity cannot interfere with three-dimensional entities. Unless I purposely lowered myself to allow myself to be interfered with, my spiritual energy could not be sensed by soul reapers or humans. Aizen would be on a higher plane than soul reapers and humans. Higher plane than you're a ghost. Higher plane than a physical human being. They cannot interact with them. Things on the metaphysical plane cannot interact with Aizen. Now, Ichigo would be so strong, he would be a step above this. Things that could not interact with a being that is on a metaphysical plane. You'd add another layer beyond that, and they wouldn't be able to interact with this version of Ichigo. Not only this, Ichigo was able to casually slap away a torrent of time and space, a distortion. He just slapped it away like it was nothing. So this guy is extremely broken. He might not have Naruto's resourcefulness, but this firepower, this godlike ability just puts him on a completely different level. And then Ichigo's strongest attack, Mugetsu, it kills him at the same time. Now you could debate whether or not his Grand Rei Sero and his fusion with Getsuga Tensho attack could be stronger. And obviously there's also this Ichigo's true Bankai with the Horn of Salvation. Unfortunately, we don't get to see it because Yuha unfortunately breaks the sword before he gets to use it. But even then, this was so strong that Yuha felt threatened enough to break it. It must be a devastating attack. I wish I could add this to the fight, but theoretically we don't see it. But maybe we could pretend or have a great idea on how it would work. So Ichigo with his regular sword can kill a godlike being. His sword slashes can kill gods. He kills Yuha with a regular sword slash. Now, if he has a Bankai that would boost the attack powers of this, obviously, if he's got a god-killing sword, you take that to the next level. I don't know exactly what it would be because we don't see it, but it would be a really devastating attack. And then on top of all this, adult Ichigo would just be stronger than this version of Ichigo. But we don't see enough to get an exact calculation. But these rough estimates are pretty decent. Pretty decent enough for us to, get an idea on how crazy this man Ichigo is. Without a doubt, he is a god killer. And there's a certain benchmark in strength where you wouldn't even be able to interact with Ichigo because of how strong he is, as seen with his Dangai form. Now, there are debates on whether or not Dangai Ichigo is stronger than Horn of Salvation. I don't want to get into that, but his firepower is just on a level that can kill, beyond godlike beings. I think, regardless, if we're trying to look at which one's stronger, it still doesn't change the fact that he has that ability. Now the question is, would he be able to kill Rimuru? So a big thing is that Rimuru's utility belt and his strength are disgusting. Now, Ichigo could be in the same tier as Rimuru, but the amount of tools Rimuru would have would not even he still wouldn't even be able to touch him. Rimuru he can regenerate his spirit if it's damaged. He can nullify spiritual attacks, physical attacks. It's really hard to imagine that you can even damage Rimuru. Ichigo might have god-killing Getsuga Tenshos, but Rimuru would have strength that could actually threaten the universe. With the same energy that was used to create the universe and destroy it, he can use. Now, there are characters stronger on the list past Ichigo that are disgusting in strength. And that's where I will actually be able to give you a more concrete answer on what exactly the strength is that Rimuru possesses. But for now, I would say that Ichigo would not be able to win against Rimuru, unfortunately. Even though he does have the potential to kill gods, etc. Now, stage 3 on the list, we have Luffy from One Piece. Now, Luffy's utility belt is not really that crazy either, or versatile as Naruto's, but Luffy does have nice abilities like being able to look into the future, Conqueror's Haki that can knock out his opponent, and Haki that can boost his defense and attack capabilities. Luffy is kinda in the same boat, but unfortunately he does not have anything such as God-killing strength, but he might have something decent enough to compensate with that. He would have Toon Force with Gear 5. Luffy, in a sense, is like a godlike being with no limitations to what he can and cannot do. With simple god tier attacks, he can grab them, interact with them like it's nothing. He can bounce your attack back like it's nothing. He can turn you into rubber. He can turn you into a cartoon, and you can do absolutely nothing about it. But unfortunately, Luffy has limits to this ability because it drains him. Now, what if we were to give him unlimited limits? What if he were to be able to fight in Gear 5 with no issues? Would he still be able to fight against Rimuru? Now, Luffy does have disgusting speed and strength, and he can damage you from the inside. In between Luffy, Ichigo, and Naruto, it's a very weird debate because all of them have, like, their abilities are just so good in their own right. It's hard to pick who would be stronger between all three of them. Even though, you know, I guess you could say Ichigo because, you know, God-killing attacks and shit like that. But then you have things such as this man, Luffy, having Toon Force. Now, Luffy's Toon Force is good, but it seems like a lower scale of it. And it would be good against opponents with basic level, I guess you could say, kits at their disposal. Now, a big issue here is debating how far Luffy's Toon Force would go. I don't think it would go too far because he's not doing anything too crazy with it, considering, you know, we have Soul Eater characters that, like, literally change the laws of physics. If anything, he has a lower level of changing the laws of physics, and they actually do this in Slime Isekai. Like, that is basically the point of how magic works within that series. And a big issue for Luffy would be, again, the range of abilities Rimuru would have. For example, he could just stop time and just kill Luffy before he'd be able to take full advantage of utilizing his Toon Force. And then again, I don't think Luffy has anything that could actually damage Rimuru. I feel like the closest one that could have probably damaged Rimuru would have been Ichigo. But even then, I don't even think he'd actually damage Rimuru either. Personally, I felt like there would have been more arguments for Luffy, but yeah, he doesn't really go that far because he doesn't have much. He's more of a brawler. And he does have, his Gum abilities are nice. Like, you know, you can do Gum Airhead, which gives him, like, Ultra Instinct. He used that against Enel and Skypiea, you know, just automatically dodging and shit like that. But for the most part, he has nothing that could really stand out or even do anything to Rimuru. I honestly didn't think explaining Luffy would have been so short. Because, you know, I fuck with Luffy. But I'm trying to give all these characters benefit of the doubt, or even, like, I'm trying to do them justice, but it's just not really working. My big thing is, too, well, here's the next character, our special character here. We got Goku. Goku could be, this argument could be a lot more in-depth, but to keep it simple, Goku with Hakai, his AP is basically, there's no limit to it because he could just use Hakai and destroy you, like delete your existence. So his attack potency, he can practically kill anything. That's what I think makes Goku so strong, is because there's no limit to what he can kill, and he can neg regeneration with Hakai. On top of this, like you know, you can talk about, you know, Kamehameha being universal, multiversal, whatever you want to say, but I feel like Hakai is the thing that really does it justice. Let's say Rimuru is multiversal. You got the defense to block multiversal attacks. Well, Hakai would invalidate that because it would just erase anything it makes contact with. And then there's one thing that really irritates me because so many people like to scale Dragon Ball, but nobody talks about this. Like, if Goku scales to Jiren, and if Jiren was so strong, his ki, his aura, gave him a shield that could block a universal Kamehameha. As you can see, the footage, you know, happened in Dragon Ball Super. theoretically, Goku would be able to have the same thing because he would be on the same strength, if not tier, as Jiren. Now, when it comes to invalidating hacks based on how strong Goku is, I feel like that can only be but few and far between. Like, in Dragon Ball, usually they specify when a character can do something like that, and I feel like there are a lot of instances, like we look at Goldo versus Krillin and Gohan. Krillin and Gohan were so much stronger that it didn't matter because Goldo had time stop. It didn't make a difference. People like to say hit its abilities, you know, not working on Goku invalidates hacks, but that could just be the way his specific time stop functions. If you're about to fight hit, his ability to do that scales to how strong you are. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a quote unquote invalidation. People like to use how Goku gets hit by Frieza's Hakai as a way like, oh, he resisted his Hakai, so he should be able to automatically invalidate any forms of hacks because he didn't get erased into existence by that attack. But, you know, Hakai is like a god key technique. So I think it's kind of crazy to just assume that Goku can just ignore all forms of hacks and attacks and shit like that when there's things to take into account, like what about their ki level, what about their aura. Like, these guys scale to each other in power despite him using a technique like Hakai. Maybe he couldn't erase him because of how strong because they're relative in power, not because, oh, he just invalidates all forms of hacks, period. Now, despite that and it being contrary to my belief, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and let him still, you know, invalidate the hacks that Rimuru might still have. But even despite this, you could still argue the level of power would be on a completely different scale, because Rimuru would have basically became his equivalent to Zeno in his verse. Now, you could argue that Zeno is at a higher level of godhood than Veldanava because how their universes work, but I would argue otherwise because in this case, it could go both ways. Which verse is stronger? Do you think Slime Izakai's verse as a whole is stronger, or Dragon Ball's verse as a whole is stronger? They both have characters that practically just destroy universes like it's nothing. So I kind of feel like at that point you have a baseless argument going on, and it's just leaning on which one you favor more. But if we look at the reality of the situation, Rimuru does hit that level of being a Zeno-type being, while Goku can't even really defeat the God of Destruction for his base universe. Now, Goku does have interesting abilities like Ultra Instinct, being able to dodge and fight automatically, but Rimuru, even at the beginning of Tensura, already had this ability unlocked. But despite that, for the most part, I do feel like Goku could automatically dodge most of Rimuru's attacks, but Rimuru could do the same thing. And then there's also the argument on whether or not Goku could even interact with Rimuru. But luckily, Goku has God Ki, so it's safe to say that he can. But similar to Ichigo and Luffy, he would have a bare bones amount of tools. Kamehameha, Instant Transmission, Hakai, and all these moves are strong as hell, but they only go but so far. And I would definitely say his best is Hakai because he could potentially just erase Rimuru. But there are other interesting factors in Tensura, like the fact that the Dragon Ball manga actually exists in Tensura, so Rimuru could also already know how Goku would fight. In fact, we already have a character like Veldora who uses a Kamehameha after reading the Dragon Ball manga in Tensura. So that's a big thing to bring up. If you wanted to throw this on the table, you could argue that he would already know how Goku is going to fight, and he'd already know his abilities, so Rimuru could actually already develop counters against him. Now, despite Goku possessing godlike strength, there are a lot of factors, or I guess I'd say the main factor as to why Goku would lose. He mainly exists as a spiritual. He mainly exists as a physical being and a human. In Tensura, they fight beyond that level, similar to how they do in Bleach. Now, in Bleach, if we universally scale and shit like that, that doesn't really matter. But in tensura, these things would function as two separate things. Like and I would say, in a way, they're their own separate tools, because they utilize both of these when they fight, and that's why we have like demi-god-like beings or demi-spiritual entities that exist within the series. So I feel like if you strip that away with quote-unquote universal scaling, that's going against what the series already set out. Let's say a character in tensura were to win a fight specifically because of the spiritual aspects they possess. I feel like we shouldn't strip that away, in a sense. Because in this case, Rimuru still exists physically. It's just that he'd have that physical and then some. It's not a matter of, in order for us to have this fight in the first place, we need to scale it by allowing him to fight a character like Ichigo, who exists as a ghost. So there's nothing to really universally scale right there. It's just the fact that he wouldn't be able to fight him on that level. Now, Hakai can kill ghosts and things of that nature and neg any form of spiritual regeneration. So it seems like, again, the best option Goku would have would be Hakai. But a major counter against Goku would be the fact that he is human. For example, Zegion in tensura has the ability to dominate water. He has water domination. Because of this, anything or any living creature that has blood, because blood's made of water, he could stop their blood flow and automatically kill them. Now, Goku is still human, and there are instances, despite being a godlike being, he fights gas. And gas basically uses telekinesis while he's underwater, and he drowns him. Because of Goku's limitations as a human and or mortal, like he can't breathe in outer space, he can drown underwater, and his body exists with those same human-like limitations, that would be his greatest downfall in this fight. Because again, Rimuru could just use water domination and kill him by stopping his blood. There are spells in tensura that can literally give you radiation and kill you. Goku would not be immune to radiation, so he could contract radiation poisoning and die. There are hundreds of different ways that Rimuru could kill Goku simply because he has the body of a mortal. No matter how strong that body might be, no matter how strong that attack potency might be, there are still ways that Goku would lose this fight. Death Streak in tensura is literally just a light of radiation that poisons you and you die. You can't do anything about that. So based on that fact, with Goku, he does have high potential of killing Rimuru with his abilities like Hakai, Ultra Instinct, dodging all of his attacks, such as that. But you can't dodge things such as, oh, your body's made of water, and now I'm going to stop all of the blood inside your body. And you can't dodge light. Like, you can't dodge a streak of light that exists and that's poisoning you. In order for him to actually be able to combat that and dodge it, he would have to not exist in the physical world. But he's a physical being, so therefore he would lose. Now, with all that being said, it seems as though Rimuru can defeat the big three, and I guess you could say the king of the big three as well, Goku. So he kind of runs this gauntlet pretty easily, I might add. Now, if you guys liked this versus battle, please let me know which other ones you'd like for me to cover. Do you have any issues with it? Comment down below, get a discussion started, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out more content.